Good afternoon. I'm Jane Freemantle and University of Melbourne and Kayla Institute. And I would, before I start, acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting, the people of the Kulin Nation. I acknowledge their elders past and present. I acknowledge also all elders in the meeting in the group today. And I particularly acknowledge the emerging leaders that we have heard so eloquently over the last couple of days. And I acknowledge them and their role in their leadership. Look, we're going to have a truncated panel here because we stand between you and lunch, and that's not a very good kind of way to be. So rather than go through, I think we might provide the opportunity for the people in the audience to actually ask questions. We've had 3 really interesting discussions, and particularly it's demonstrated the reignition of the fire, which was so eloquently described by James this morning, but then reiterated by Mark in his description of the fire, and how they're reigniting the work and the languages and capturing the audio-visual important information that's been gathered over thousands and thousands of years. We've also heard from Kayla Institute how listening to the voices of the community, and over a period of 10 years, this work is now being raised by the community with their ideas and how it's being captured and the governance within which that's been captured. And finally, we heard the most wonderful presentation by the group from further North Korea in North Queensland, and how they've actually again responded to an enormous community need, listened to the people, and determined that any of the work that was being done and the information being collected was governed and led and collated by the people. So I think the best thing to do would be to open the questions to the floor of people who'd like to ask any of these people a little bit more information on the programs they've described this morning. And I'm sure there are some questions. Yes, wonderful. Yes, please, and announce your name and where you're from.
Okay. I'm Robin Sloggett. I'm the Director of the Grimwade Centre here at the University of Melbourne. And I just wanted to pick up this idea of waking information up and turning it into data, because there's been lots of discussion around data collection, data dissemination, data access, but we've been working with Mark quite a bit with the museum and the audio-visual material, but also with art centres across the top end. And there's lots of material, cultural material particularly, that is data potential more than existing data. And it's held, across space and time and in various formats, but it's at high risk. So there's almost a kind of precluding process to this, which is, the conservation process. It's my discipline. But I just wanted to perhaps get some comments about that, about this kind of risk level that we have of material that exists, it's coming back into community or it sits in community. There's now methods for making it more accessible, getting broader voices and conversations about it. But, one cyclone, one fire, and it's gone forever. So I just perhaps wanted some comment on that.
Perhaps, Mark, would you be able to respond in the first instance?
Yeah, thanks, Robin. Thanks, everybody. That's our biggest headache there in Wadeye, because our old hospital, which is the museum, the roof is not nailed down very good. We did lose a lot of handwritten documents some years ago when the roof was leaking. Just that texture, non-waterproof texture, translations of languages that aren't spoken now, documents gone. Yeah, and so fire is our number one concern. Cyclone, you get a bit of a warning. You can pack things up and put them in a shipping container, but fire is a really big headache. So with Jordan, we're concentrating on the video collection, highest priority, get them finished, and then we're going to work on the photographic collection after that. And we do try and look after our photos with air conditioners and dehumidifiers, but you've got to get them copied. And safe storage, we're trying to keep 3 sites within our community, plus with AIATSIS and with Melbourne University, good partnerships developing over the last number of years. So that's the highest priority, digitise everything, and then we have, because we've started, people come to us, Dean, Jordan, myself, any time of day or night you're walking around, someone's got a USB stick. They think we've digitised every photo and every video and even the traditional music, and we got it instantly, we can just give it to them. And they say, what about that video? I had a request the other day for a crocodile. I said, I got thousands of crocodile photos. I don't know which one you want. It's so hard until they everything eventually get catalogued. But first we've got to scan everything or digitise everything and get safe storage on community and down here. Data storage is huge. Video files are huge. There's no more tapes anymore. The council keep asking me, why do you want to buy more hard drives all the time? I say, well, we're standing here for 6 days doing videos of dancing every day for circumcision ceremony. How many terabytes is this going to be just about? Anyway, so data storage number one.
In saying that as well, over the last month or so, we have gotten 3 different sites with about 50 terabytes worth of storage in Lacey drives that are accessible to us within our TDC network. So that is we're moving towards the safer data sovereignty basically in the community itself, but there's still so much stuff that hasn't been protected and digitized itself that it's getting there. And also we move towards getting rid of that issue of the community coming up to us constantly wanting us to copy videos and stuff that way through the Bauer studio, and David, who's sitting over there, who came up and did a media box with a big projector in the middle of the town, which is working fantastic with the community, and they've been able to see those cultural videos and everything along those lines. And
you've described enormous fragility of data that's been, and information that's been around, language that's been around, that's being lost, and how important it is. And I imagine you'd also be doing it on the smell of an oily rag with very little funding.
And picking and choosing where we're getting that funding from and sort of sneakily saying it's going places, and if you want to put it that way. But
so we're going from reigniting to igniting, and the data that you're collecting, Glenis and Kiara, is incredibly important data. So how are you going to be able to safeguard those data so that they can be built upon and people can actually continue to add to them? We've heard about some amazing longitudinal data that's being captured. So what are your plans for that?
Most of the originals are sitting currently in Western Australia, in the University of Western Australia, but we intend, because the programs have changed, there's changes in UWA and within the Commission and within our organisation, we intend to bring that back to put it onto the system that we're creating, and then everything else goes back under lock and key, which is where the originals are kept now. But we need a storing place, we need a safe place to put it so that you can capture or someone can look at the stories. We've got over 170 stories of most significant change, and if that was analysed and worked at how to measure empowerment or measure resilience, and that would be something incredible for the country.
So those data at the moment are on actually paper.
Yes.
So somehow there has to be a way to actually capture that, digitalise it, so that it's kept.
This is only just 3 weeks ago. We've only just put this together.
Wow.
Yeah, 3 weeks
Sounds
ago.
like we need something like this.
So it's good that we've come to this, because we've heard a lot of stuff that we can go back and, put into our own community.
And with the work that's being done at Kaela, how are you, say it's been a 10-year project and you're now beginning to get some amazing data, but what's really, really important is capturing the community voices. Do you want to talk a little bit about that community engagement and how you're ensuring that every bit of data that's being looked at goes through a translation?
So with the data unit, one of the critical things is having Aboriginal governance structure around the use and the interpretation and the control and authority over the data. And also listening to Darren Clinch this morning, it would be really interesting to actually have a repository for the data that we have so that it's in real time and we're not having to wait for census, and we can have bespoke data that talks about our own community.
And Karyn, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think a very good example of a research project or projects has been actually driven by the community because they wanted their own data, which we were unable to get out of data that we'd developed before, was the Ghana-Boro project. Do you want to talk just a little bit about that, because it's an important example?
Last year, we did a pilot study where we linked data across Shepparton and Echuca, the Yorta Yorta country, which spans 3 local government areas. So linking data from different sources and different databases just to build an accurate picture of our Indigenous mothers and babies and child health. So, and looking at patterns of service access so we can find out what's happening in the journey of pregnancy and antenatal care.
But I think the important example of that was that it was a project that was identified by the community, and before we even got going on that, we developed the guiding principles and, importantly, the governance. How is this information going to be stored? And importantly, Karyn is now doing her PhD, which is going to expand that information, which is very exciting. Any other questions? Yes, thank you. Would you like to come up?
Hello, I'm Fiona Martin from the University of New South Wales. Thank you everybody for very interesting talks. What I just wanted to ask are your comments about how you make sure that this data that you've collected is then accessible, and by that I mean perhaps understandable, meaningful to the members of your community. And I particularly note the comments from Mark that, you know, there's different language groups. So how do you make sure that the community, who are the important people, can actually understand this data and make, you know?
Yeah, whenever we do a videotape or audio tapes are finished, but all the names of the people who recorded it, the people who are on the tapes, what language they're talking, what stories they're talking about. First, we digitise, say, a super VHS tape, maybe 3 hours. We may have 4 or 5 different events. Digitise the whole tape first, and then this is where it comes back to Jordan with the Aboriginal people. They then split it up into different tracks. And then on a spreadsheet, which we email backwards and forwards to Melbourne University and Sydney and AIATSIS. And we've got the library, our knowledge centre's not quite functioning properly at the moment, but the big priority is to digitise everything first, and then we engage with the Aboriginal people, because we don't know who all the people are. That's why they have to do that for us, or with us. So we do the technical stuff, they give us the information. And who's speaking, I know which language they're talking about. Jordan, he doesn't know who most of the people we've worked with are now dead. So we can't afford to lose this data. They gave us their stories, that we pass it on to their generations for the future. So it's up to us to make sure we do not lose it. And so we have to have safe data storage, good RAIDs, and copies in town and out of town. So have I answered your question? Sort of.
Did you want to come back, please?
So one of the other ways we've been talking about at the Kylie Institute is that not only doing like a boring academic report that might be interesting to government, but looking at innovative ways of sharing our data. So through fact sheets, so we might have some headline data that would be interesting to the community, but also how do we use social media in getting our data out there and in a really accessible way to the community.
And if I can add to it too, is that with how we collect data, and that's just not only in this program but in many different ways, is that usually you appoint people who know how the makeup of the community is, and then you have focus groups or community meetings. We take our issues to the elders and before and after, and so that they have a chance to approve or disapprove. And when it's pertaining to one particular group, if you put it out there, that group comes and then you go to the next group. So you might need to have several meetings rather than one big communal thing, which never usually work anyway.
Any other story? Yes, we have. Oh, terrific. If you'd like to wander down to No, come here if you like. Come here.
Nikki Moody from the University of Melbourne. This is a tangential question, I think, in a lot of ways, but it seems that there are some connections between the work in data and employment and economic development. And I was just wondering if that's a perspective that is, you know, you're kind of working with around the creation of jobs and how data can be supportive, or working with data is necessary for economic development.
Yes, right, yeah. When we get the tapes digitised, that's where the Aboriginal employment comes in. And then, we need a lot of people to help us.
But then still in turn with that, we do use a lot of the old videos and stuff with the local TV and creating new content, and a lot of, I work a lot with employment and training themselves. So basically everyone that's come into the media broadcasting sort of team of Wadeye recently have all gone through the employment and training program and gotten jobs through that way. Like we've got new radio DJs and new cameramen and all that sort of stuff. And then they draw to this old data and this old information for inspiration, basically. How to make it. They see their ancestors or their fathers or their uncles or anything like that. Like there was an old, like Cyril Ninnell, one of the elders in town. His father, who's also named was Cyril Ninnell, sat down a while ago and did just spoke to the camera, like in the 70s, I think it was.
Cyril Senior was in the 80s.
Early 80s, and talked about his alcoholism and how it affected his family and all that sort of stuff. And then just recently, Cyril, his son, who's about the same age, if not older, that he was then, he sat down and watched it, and the same repeating sort of things is happening. He could see that, and he wants to make a video himself to pass on to his about alcoholism and things like that. So this old data is getting absorbed so much by the community to inspire them and get rid of that disconnect that a lot of the older generation in communities have towards the newer generation with new technologies, and sort of connecting it a little bit. So it's definitely helping quite a lot.
Connect back to cultural stories.
Yeah, that's like with our community, the community garden that's happening at the moment, that there will actually be running itself eventually, where income will be coming into it, and they will, well, not just that, we've got one guy that's the supervisor, and we got funding in there to help him run it. He's a local, he was born there, I'm not born there, he was raised there, and his whole journey through this whole thing. So when we do get properly up and running, we're gonna go through his whole journey and put it and collect it and put it into data, because he when I first met him, when I first started with Glenis on NEP and went out to the community, he knew my husband all his life, but it's the first time I ever met him. So he had a heart problem, and he come out and he was very sluggish, you know, very just really tired, and you know, just the other week he come running to the car, and he was like, oh hey sis, hey aunt, like, you know, and I was like, oh hey, you look very good, you know, just colour to the face, and just this is the kind of data we want to collect, because this is the positive data that's going to come out of the community and say, hey, you know, it can happen, positive data can be collected, you know, so yeah.
And you want to say something, Jordan?
Just about the how it's sort of closing, being able to give people access to the data that we have, the tapes, the slides, the films. It's beginning to close that gap that's been created recently between people and their cultural heritage. And a lot like in Wadeye, a lot of people don't even know that museum exists, let alone the extent of the collection. You know? So by making the media available to everyone, we're actually starting reigniting those stories of, like in the media box that was created with the architecture students. It's in the centre of town, so people can come and sit down with families and talk about, that's my grandmother, that's my father, and it just gets that whole idea of who they are back into their minds, and if we can,
because some people's country or homeland is 3-4 hours away sometimes. So and 6 months out of the year we can't get out of town because it's full of water. So this stuff really connects them back to country and gets that longing to want to go back out to country. and all that sort of stuff, and get that heritage back there, that stuff that's sort of been ripped away a little bit. So.
Yes.
I just want to say, the school used to come down to the museum quite a lot. Different classes come down. Then the last 3 years, it's dropped off. And so some of the younger ones coming out that Jordan was talking about, never been to the museum and don't know what we got. So if they went to school, that's another story.
I was just going to ask, Glenis, this is exactly what we're talking about. Do you want to pose that question and challenge?
Yeah, I'd like to, because of the way that we are all collecting data on the ground, and a lot of us have come back from other areas, but how and when are resources going to be provided to groups or to the community to actually start putting that together and start creating safe places, setting up virtual sort of settings where people can go in on country that way if they can't get out physically on country. I think I've seen a video of some kind where you can literally go virtually onto that country walking. I mean, when will all this come about? I mean, it seems to be a national sort of universal consciousness on data at the moment. It's just weird because we only started talking about it a few weeks ago, saying that we needed something and we needed to churn all this information out for our people. But now that we're here, sitting here, I'd like to see some sort of a recommendation so that we do get serious and that we do have the governance structure and we do have some way of coming back to it, or some security in knowing that some department's going to fund a project to look at how we do it, you know?
So Glenis has set out a recommendation. I know there are people here taking notes, so I hope that's going to be collected so that that'll be part, I know, of the summing up is to actually, we've heard you say we're about here, how do we actually take it to the next level? And we've heard a lot of examples. I've been given the wind-up message. So before I finish, is there anything that any of the panel would like to actually, something that, a pearl or something that we haven't actually touched on that you'd like to offer as we close this? Yes.
I talk too much. No, I started this up years ago because I was working and young people coming around for different things here and there, and I'm looking at them and I felt sorry for them. And I started this little phrase, connecting children with country and culture. And that's what I battle on, and that's what I try to do until I die.
Is there anybody else would like to make a comment before we leave?
No, the sooner we get it done, the better.
Right, that's pretty good. That's a good note to finish on. So I'd like to thank Karyn, Raelene, Dean, Mark, Jordan, Glenis and Kiara. And I'd like you to join me in thanking three really amazing